everybody, and welcome to the It's podcast. My name is Corey Eichelberger, and today I am accompanied by my chocolate labradoodle Cody, who just walked in under the table. It is a cold and kind of overcast, but got a lot of snow in the front yard. You lay down. Lay down. You're banging. Okay, we got Cody settled. I've already been interrupted. His tail was banging the table leg, and you guys were going to hear the entire time. Oh, it's always interruptions. I don't know how people turn on their cameras and kind of podcast live and don't edit, because I have so many interruptions. Well, some of the interruptions are from my brain, but I have so many interruptions. Anyway, welcome. Come on in for a hug. Can you feel me giving you a great big hug? It's the new year, and we're all still, trying to hang in there and plod forward, move on, stay home. I drove on Saturday to Stephen B to pick up my Knitwords trunk show, so I did leave the house. They had the suitcase waiting for me, so I just picked it up and basically drove back home. But I taught to the Virginia River City Knitters Guild on Saturday. So hi to any of you who are new to my podcast and have joined me over here. Or to Linda, thank you so much for having me. I really appreciate it. It's hard to teach on Zoom. I have done it a number of times now, and knitters are great because they'll knit while you speak, and I have no problem with that. But there's a lot of this. So you're speaking to the group and they're all muted, which I understand, right? We don't need feedback. We don't need background noise. But you're just talking and talking at them. They're super kind to sit and listen to me for an hour and a half or hour and 45 minutes and go on and on. And you don't get that kind of person-to-person contact, with laughter and kind of interruptions and things that make the energy kind of there. And as an extrovert, I think that's the piece I'm missing the most, is kind of just filling up my energy from other people. Living with two introverts in my house at, one time, I was really unaware that both my husband and my daughter were such introverts until I read that book about being an introvert, and it just was eye-opening to me how little energy they receive from other people and how it kind of drains them, and how much energy and how filled up I can get. So what am I wearing today? This is my hi-ho shawl, and I was trying to decide how I wanted to style it, because it does have those little buttons along the edge, which you can certainly leave off, but I just think they're so cute. And then you've got some eyelets along the other edge. But I kind of like wearing my shawls like this. When it's cold outside, I'm a turtleneck girl. Although my daughters convinced me to get rid of most of them, because turtlenecks aren't in. They should be in Minnesota and Canada forever and ever. But I did keep my orange and my red one. And so I put on my bright orange turtleneck to make me happy, and then I just decided to throw it around like this. But you can wear it as a poncho or a cowl or as a long scarf and, loop it twice, all different ways. You've all seen it before, but it was bright and colorful, and I think that's kind of what we need in January here. I have a full show for you today. I have decided not to be stressed about the length of my podcasts anymore. Yes, they do take longer for me to edit and upload, and they take longer for you to watch. But many of you were very kind in saying, people can always turn it off if they want to be done. And a lot of you do. Like, I get feedback via YouTube about how long people stay engaged with the podcast. It doesn't tell me who they are, but it tells me, a majority of people turned off after 47 minutes, or 20% of the people, whatever, that kind of thing, which is fascinating. But you're grown adults, right? If you don't want to stay hooked to your iPad or your computer or your TV for longer than 20 minutes, then that's totally your prerogative. And then I was thinking about it, and 30 to 40,000 of you watch Jodi and Tracy of the Grocery Girls, and they'll go on for 2 hours. So I figured If they can just not worry about it and not do as much editing, I'm not going to stress so much about editing out little pieces so that it makes the podcast 3 minutes shorter or 10 minutes shorter or whatever. So thank you for that. I really enjoy getting feedback from all of you every week, so feel free to leave a comment. It would really mean a lot to me if you would subscribe or hit the thumbs up button. You don't have to comment, but those two things can really help. And I'm going forward here, start to add some more content to my YouTube channel. So I was hoping to start at the beginning of January with some extra content and putting up some more informal chat sessions. Amber and I were going to do a recording together. I still hope we can do that. And then I was going to do a couple of lives on Instagram and maybe on YouTube as well, where you could ask me some questions, because I think I would love to have some one-to-one interaction and contact with all of you. So I think starting on this Friday at 11 a.m. Central Standard Time, I'm going to go live on Instagram or YouTube. I got to figure out which one is a little bit easier. I think I'll start on Instagram. But I'll see. Sometimes I have internet issues at my house, which all of you know. And I spent 6 hours on Friday with a Microsoft update that did not allow me to open anything on the home computer. And since I was going to try to be at a retreat this weekend, a small mini retreat online with a bunch of ladies that I know from a retreat in 2012, and they usually meet in Duluth, Minnesota, and I hadn't attended for a number of years because I had been going to the January thaw, and then Ross and I went to Arizona to the Barrett-Jackson auction, and it's always this last weekend, and I was so bummed that my computer wasn't working, so I spent a lot of time with the Geek Squad as well as with MediaCom, which is my internet service, and we finally eventually turned everything off for a while, and it did kind of reboot itself and I was back to normal. But if someone could have told me that at 9 a.m. instead of at 3 p.m. in the afternoon, that shutting it down for a while, I restarted, but I hadn't turned off the router and the modem and the tower and left it off. Anyway, I don't really know that that's the answer. I think sometimes it just works. But if I can be on at 11 a.m. Central Standard Time on Friday, if you have knitting questions, project questions, you want an opinion on something, if you would like to ask me, you've always wanted to kind of ask me, it would be easier for me to just answer it right then. I'm a pretty open book, so you can send me some. I will do a little survey in my stories, and you can send me some questions ahead of time so I won't have to name you, but if you want to come on, and then I will save that to my stories. I have some ideas going forward. I'm going to try to also improve the quality of the podcast by getting a video camera. We've been looking into that. I currently record on my iPad and that works fine, but it's difficult to upload and I do all my editing on my iPad. And if I could do my editing in iMovie on my home computer, I think that I could do some better sound quality and lighting and, just a little better video. So I'm going to put some energy into that here in the next couple of weeks. My husband has gotten on board to maybe video for me so that I can be in front of the video camera and do some a little more content for all of you. Anyway, let's get started. I have a confession right away up front. For my audiobook section last time and this time, I have given up the ghost on 2 audiobooks in a row. And one of them is going to become the Corey stories for today. But I did give up entirely about 3/4 of the way through one book and about 3 or 4 hours into the second book. That's the thing I am not loving about the Libby app, is that if you don't get on it right away and you're not watching it, they take it back. You can't extend. And sometimes I need another, day. And so what was happening with the second book is they were going to take it back. And I decided, you know what? I am not loving listening to this. So that book was Change of Heart by Jodi Picoult. And I think one of you recommended it to me. And it wasn't that I don't like Jodi Picoult or her stories, but the theme and the story of that particular one was about an inmate on death row who had some mental deficiencies or had some issues and had, I believe, killed this girl and her mother. But then there was a young attorney working for the ACLU who I thought I would love, and she was struggling with her faith, and she was Jewish, and then there was a priest and he was coming to visit this death row inmate, and it was just all a little too much, right? Like sometimes your brain is just not in the place where it needs to be dealing with some of those big issues. I don't want to get political, but I know that we have executed too many people who were not guilty. And we have a lot of people in prison who are not guilty. And my heart kind of breaks on that situation. Have you been watching that they're letting out some of these people who they now prove them innocent through DNA and that kind of thing? And they've been in jail for, 20 years, 30 years, and they've maintained their innocence. And then they find them innocent. And I get choked up and my heart gets heavy with things like that. And so for me and my, depression and my bipolar type 2, if you haven't been here very long, I'm pretty open about that. I can have some real highs and lows, and fully medicated, let's be honest here. But I just decided, you know what? I'm living in a pandemic. I'm not leaving my house. I don't have people filling me up in my daily life as far as human to human exchanges. So maybe it would be just best to listen to that one later. So, long story, but the second book is my Corey story. So I'm going to push that till the end. I think some of you know by now that I put a header in. I put up a slide so that you can see where the kind of differentiation between the different segments are. So if you just want to, scroll across on your iPad or fast forward, you can kind of see when those bright orange screen comes up, although I'm changing those a little today. And so you can just jump forward if you don't want to do the audiobook section or the recipe section or the tips and tricks or the podcast or recommendations, whatever. You can always just skip forward, and that's your prerogative too. It's all you get to watch what you want, and you can walk away from the things that don't interest you. Okay, the recipe of the week we made last week, and I have an interesting little tidbit to tell you about this. Ross and I were discussing what we're gonna have for supper for the whole week, and I said, let's make chicken and wild rice, and he said, oh, we haven't had that for a long time. You haven't made that since Kylie lived at home, probably, because it makes a huge batch. And this little memory popped into my head that I received a casserole from Kelly M. I won't call you out too much, Kelly. She watched the podcast. She's a knitter friend, and she lives in Virginia. And she brought me this when I had my first knee replacement. So my right knee was replaced in 2005 in Virginia. And this makes such a huge batch that you can make it and keep some of it for your family and then give some of it away. And it's delicious. But I was out looking and printing out the copy of it to put it in the show notes this weekend, and it said from Kelly M on it. So thank you, Kelly, because that hug that you gave me in 2005 is still hugging me today, because you made me a meal for my family at the time, and I think of you every time I make this. Oh, yeah, isn't that nice to think about that? And I've had people bring me in meals with these surgeries, and it is an amazing gift when someone brings you a meal, because it's one less thing you have to think about, and you just really don't have the cleanup or the prep. And we should be bringing that back a little more people gifting people meals. So quickly, it's Uncle Ben's long grain and wild rice mix, butter, onion, celery, 2 cans of water chestnuts, chopped, sliced. That crunch in there is just awesome. 5 cups of cooked chicken shredded, 4 cups of shredded cheddar cheese, 2 cans of cream and mushroom soup. And you can make that yourself at home if you don't want to use like the actual cans. I've done that before. 16 ounces of sour cream. This is not a light casserole. A cup of milk, salt, pepper, and breadcrumbs for the top. So this is kind of one of those, you make the rice. Although last time I didn't make the rice, I put the rice in with all the other ingredients and added some extra water. And it did okay. You know how you can do that with pasta? And with my hand, my stir is not working real great still. I left my brace off right now for a little bit because I thought I'm not going to bump it while I'm doing the podcast here. It is sitting right here, but I do have it off today. And I'm not supposed to have it off for 12 weeks, right? Like I'm still wearing it. I don't want some of you to scold me about having it off, but it just feels good to have it in the open and the air, and I have pretty good range of motion. So anyway, don't scold me. I'm very careful, and I'll put it on in a minute. So you kind of mix it all together, and my casserole is a big oval dish about this deep, and it fills it to the top. But I have made it in 2 separate like glass dishes, round. What would that be? Maybe they're like a 5-quart or a 4-quart round dish. It just makes a lot, but it freezes great. And if you like having freezer meals, you could even portion it out into smaller meals, individual meals for lunches or whatever. It's just a delicious recipe. So all the recipes are in the Ravelry group, and they're in the first thread, they're listed. And then behind the name, so it'll say chicken and wild rice casserole, and then it will say number 56. And that means in post 56, the recipe is written out. If I can link the recipe from like a website or something, I do at the top of the post, it'll say linked here. And so you don't have to copy and paste. You can just click and go over and print it from there if you prefer. Like, I really like it if I can have a photo with my recipes. So I will often print from a website. But anyway, there's your recipe of the week this week. And last night we were talking about what we're going to make this week, and I have next time's recipe because I thought, oh, that would be a good one to share. So that's fun. I've got some podcast recommendations this week. I've got 4 or 5 of them. I didn't have any last time, and so then they kind of back up a little bit. But did you guys know that Sue and Liz from the 2 Tangled Skeins podcast from Canada, who used to be with Lynn, and then they had another gal early on, they're back. And I didn't know they were back. They came back in July, and it's now called Distant Stitches Podcast. And it's Sue, Crafty Knitter 7, and Liz, Jaded Knitter. And I used to watch the 2 Tangled Skeins back in the day, and I met them at Stitches Midwest in Chicago many years ago. We have a picture together, I'm pretty sure. So anyway, that's a good one. And then the Not Quite Enough Distance podcast. If you guys haven't seen this one, this is Lesley Arnold-Hopkins, and she is awesome. She sang knitting-themed Christmas carols for all of Knitvent. She did the Vlogmas knitting thing every day. Go watch the beginning of all of the December podcasts because she's a riot. It's really good. And she's had a podcast for a long time. She's out of the UK. I can't recommend her enough. She's got a great sense of humor. She's really clever. She's kind of conversational. So yeah, I love Lesley. I just found her in December and decided that I really needed to kind of watch her more often. I got a text from my husband. He never texts me, but he's late coming home. He's doing car engine stuff this morning. He was very excited because his engine was getting put on a dynamometer, something. He left early this morning because he has the day off and went down, and he was going to be home at noon, and it's past noon, and anyway, so he just texted. Another interruption. There you go, but I'm not going to worry about it. Okay, then I watched the Little Drops of Wonderful podcast, and that is just such a treat. It is with Allie, and I first watched the episode with Dan, and she's Starry Eyes Allie, and they are in Southeast England in Kent, and they did one together where they answered questions. I would like to do that with Ross sometime, because Ross is kind of a real serious guy who thinks he has a really, really good funny bone, and I disagree with that a lot of times. So I think it would be funny to see how he came across on the podcast if he had to answer questions about knitting or something. Anyway, but it was great, and they really shared a lot of personal stuff. They both dealt with ulcerative colitis. And they talked a little about that and about homeschooling their 2 girls. And it was really good. Then I went back and watched her first one. And then I started another one. But I would highly recommend Little Drops of Wonderful. My friend Mary Brown, hi Mary, loves the Last Homely House podcast. And she has talked about it a number of times. And when she first told me, I went out and watched one. And then for some reason didn't continue to watch them. And then after the holidays, I was watching more of them. And this is just a great podcast. So it's Kate in the UK. And it's named after the last homely house east of the sea from a Tolkien quote. And she reads that little story on one of her podcasts. So you can go back and look at the podcast that's titled, Why Do I Call My House the Last Homely House? And it's just a really nice little story. But she does gardening and quilting and tells stories and has honey and bees and chickens. And she sells products. And her son is a woodworker who makes things. And it's just, and they're not super long. She's briefer than I am. Dog interruption. Bing. Anyway, so highly recommend. And you've got 2 years of content with a ton of like almost daily or twice weekly, or she puts out a lot of podcasts and is really interesting. The topics are fascinating to me. Yeah, it's just, I've really enjoyed it, Mary. So I need to tell you, thank you for kind of saying it again a couple of times so that I got my act together and watched that a little bit more. And then lastly, I started one last night, Stop, Drop, and Knit. And that is with Lisa Westervelt. She's a flautist and lives in Long Island, New York. And she started her podcast in the fall, I think. She's on like episode 10. So she's fairly new. And she is Lisa Westervelt on Instagram. But Stop, Drop, and Knit. So I got a bunch for you guys. And if you've already listened to all these or watched these, then you're way ahead of me and you're way ahead of the game. And that's great because, I get recommendations from people and then I don't always get on it right away. Okay, let's do some tips and tricks and pet the dog, shall we? I have a picture to show you. I was just scrolling through Instagram, as I do, and I saw this from Thecrazysocklady, and she was talking in her stories about a board she had her husband make for her to use her mini skeins, and I thought it was brilliant. Look at that. They just put little golf tees in the corners of a board, and this measurement right here is one size mini skein, and if she went around all 4 pegs, it would be another size mini skein. So she opens her mini skein, stretches it around that, and then she can knit right off of it. Now I like my around the neck method, don't get me wrong, that's easy, I don't have to make a board. But if you're really struggling with mini skeins and you don't like that around the neck method where you just kind of move it around and then unloop it from your neck every so often, and I talked about that and showed on a podcast how I do that, so you can go back in the tips and tricks and look that one up if you haven't seen it. But I thought this was brilliant. And all you would need is a scrap piece of, even cardboard, right? And you could just like wrap it around some thick, a box that's the right size, or cut it down and tape it together. Like there is a lot of ways that you could DIY something like this. So I thought I'd share, because she had it in her story, so it went away. It won't be, out there. And I haven't seen all of her podcasts. Like, I watch them fairly often, but I haven't watched them all, so maybe she has talked about it. But I thought it was brilliant. Okay? This weekend, I was on Zoom with the Knit a Journey retreat ladies. Hi, if any of you were watching. It was wonderful. That Knit a Journey was an audio podcast back in the day with Susan Dolph out of the Duluth, Minnesota area, and Susan could tell a gentle story. She'd always start with, I'm going to tell you a story. Once upon a time, it was just lovely. I'll never forget her podcast. But she stopped podcasting, I don't know how many years ago it was now, but she was diagnosed with blood cancer, and she's doing fine, but she wasn't podcasting anymore. But she held a knitting retreat in Duluth, and then she moved it to Minneapolis, and she had it at a hotel over by the Mall of America in 2012. And in 2012, Kylie was in high school, and she must have been in her second year, a sophomore, and it was the weekend that I had to go to a parent meeting on Saturday, and we had to be talked to about all the different kinds of speech and everything. So I went to the retreat on Friday night and then on Sunday, but I couldn't go on Saturday to kind of the all day part of it, because one thing, it was more across the city, and I had that thing that I had to go to. I'll never forget it, because I was so disappointed that I had to do that, and I was very happy that Kylie joined speech, and she had a lot of success in that, so it's definitely worth it. But those ladies have continued to meet. And this weekend, I kind of told you, they had separate Zoom sessions each day, and I couldn't go on Saturday again because I was teaching, but I went on Friday night and then on Sunday. And on Saturday, they talked about the topic of durable, comfortable yarn. And then they sent an email out of the chat thread where people were recommending kinds of durable yet comfortable yarn. And I thought, I'm going to print that, because that would be a good list for someone to have. So here are the yarns very quickly, and these will be in the show notes as well. Green Mountain Spinnery Sylvan Spirit, 50 wool, 50 tencel. Berroco Vintage, Cascade Venezia, 70% wool, 30% silk. Berroco Ultrawool, Valley Yarns Northampton. Frangipani 5-ply Guernsey, which is available at the Woolly Thistle online. Elsebeth Lavold wool and silk blends, although I disagree on that one, because I think that those are lovely yarns, but they stretch like the dickens. I made one thing. Maybe it was just me, but I would knit it at a tighter gauge next time, just in my honest opinion. Savannah Queensland Collection, 66% silk and 34% linen, which I think is a great blend, and I would like to try that, so I might look that one up. And then Juniper Moon Farms, Harrisville Designs, and Shetland. So a list from a group of women who were talking about what are some durable yarns. I assume someone was trying to buy something and make something they wanted to be durable yet comfortable, and so most of them have like some type of nylon or tencel or silk in them to make them more durable. But woolly wools, right? So I thought, thanks for sharing. I wasn't even there, and I got that information. There's a World War II museum in Kansas City, Kansas, I think, is where it was at. Oh, shoot. I got to write down more when I write these things down. Anyway, they have YouTube videos up, and they're called Knitting with Mrs. Hoover, and they did an informational video on YouTube about the World War I Museum, and then they brought in a group of knitters, and they were going to knit projects from the World War I era. And they were giving them the patterns, and then the people were going to sit and knit. Like this garter stitch scarf was the first one I saw, and then they were going to be knitting in the audience. They filled an auditorium of people while they talked about knitting in World War I era. It's really fascinating, like an hour long. I just Googled in YouTube, the search engine, and the first one that came up I watched, it was really good. And there were several that you could, because they gathered a few times, and they're old. They're from maybe 4 years ago. Like, they're not current today. I don't even know if they're still meeting, but I thought that's another thing you might want to watch or know a little bit about. So there you go. Knitting with Mrs. Hoover and the World War One. Oh, did I say two the whole time? Oh, stink. Okay, not gonna worry about it. I'm correcting it now. World War One Museum. If I misspoke, which I probably did. And I'm not gonna go back. Okay, you will notice today that I do not have my mannequins in the room. I do not have a sweater or a shawl of the week because I have a new pattern coming out tomorrow. And if I get this up before midnight tonight, the pattern will be there. We decided to add some more pictures this weekend, and so my graphics person is laying out a page of pictures because Amber took my pictures for this again. I sent her 9 projects that she photographed with her daughter and her niece's boyfriend, who all live in town with them, and they're beautiful. But I need like 3 or 4 pictures at the most for a pattern, right? And then I can put a few more on the Ravelry page, so I can put as many as I want, but I can put a ton on the Ravelry page. I think I had 91 pictures to choose from, and I liked them all. A few of them were duplicates, right? Like she'll take 2 or 3 of the same, but I want to include 91 pictures in this pattern and then have the pattern be super short and brief. Anyway, she knows this. I've talked to her. She did a really great job. So the pattern is a revamp of a pattern that I've had on Ravelry for many years. And it was called the Plaid Woven Lap Blanket. And it was free. I put it out on Ravelry when Ravelry went into, business in 2008. I think it was probably 2009 when I joined, and then 2010 when I decided that all my old patterns could be housed on Ravelry so that they would never, expire or go away. They would just always be out there. So I have all my felting patterns that are still out there, and I have, a rug and a coat, and they're all free because I didn't update them at the time. And some of you will remember, and I told this story this weekend, you used to go to the yarn store and you would buy your pattern in a plastic sheet and all your pages would be in there, and then there would be a picture taped to the front on the top of the pattern. And I would sit at home and print out 20 copies of the pattern and then have 20 pictures made, and then I would stick them on with double stick tape and slide them in the sleeves, and then I would take them to a yarn store and I would hawk my wares, right? I'd go in and I'd say, I'm selling these patterns for $2 and you can turn around and sell them for $4. And I would drive to Charlottesville and Williamsburg and Richmond, where I was living at the time, and I'd come home and at the end of the day I'd made $12. It just wasn't sustainable, right? Which is why I stopped designing, because I couldn't figure out how to make a living at it because there was no such thing as a PDF download. So I decided to just put them up for free, and someday I might go back and revamp them. So I have revamped a couple. They're going to be coming out in the next little while. They've been rewritten, they're updated, they're all checklist patterns with row by row instructions, good abbreviations, and great pictures. And I'm so excited about this design. I cannot even tell you. So I'm going to stand for this part because they're blankets and I have to hold them up. So here is the first blanket. I have it folded in half, and this one was knit by Beth as a sample knit, so thank you, Beth. It's just beautiful. This is a 4-color blanket, and it is the easiest thing to knit. So you are going to knit garter stripes, okay? And you're going to knit 16 rows of garter and 16 rows and 16 rows. And then 8 and 16, and there's a repeat. And then when you get all done, you knit garter stitch all the way, the whole way, bind off, and then you go back and you weave underneath the purl stitches, just under, over, with a 5-inch long weaving needle. So this is the weaving needle that you need. It's 5 inches long. So you can just stick it under a whole bunch of pearls, and then you pull it through, and it goes really slick. I highly recommend the needle You can get them at any sewing store, Michael's, Joann's, online, Amazon. It's a few dollars. They're not expensive, and it makes the weaving go super fast. So you start here and you just weave under, over, all the way across, and when you get to the other end, you cut it off. Then you can go back the other way or start again down here, and then you alternate. So you go over, under on the first one, and under, over, just like that. And when you get two things woven, you just tie a knot, and the yarn is held double. I used brown sheep prairie spun DK for the two sample blankets, held double. And that's a lot of yarn. You have to get quite a bit of yarn, but brown sheep has a good price point, the best I found. And I really like the gauge and the feel of the blanket and the weight of the blanket. You could certainly go up a needle if you want it to be really drapey. I think these are great for warmth. They work for as a baby blanket, a mat for the floor, for over a car seat, as a car blanket for in your car, as a football stadium watching over your lap blanket. That's really what I was thinking, that you would do it in your school colors, you know, college, NFL teams, and you would take it when you go to those events. So the first one is quite small. It would cover me if I'm standing here and I lift it up to right here, it's touching the ground, and I'm 5'3" on a good day. So it just covers my lap, right? It's from side to side. Now if I do it this way, here is my arm outstretched, and then my arm outstretched. So that gives you an idea of the small sized blanket. So that one is the original blanket that I made, and I'll show you that one now, because of course I didn't do it in a fun navy tartan when I made mine. This was the original blanket in Corey colors, right? Purple and blue and green and orange. But it would be great in nursery colors if the mama to be chose Winnie the Pooh. You could do it in the gold and the red, with the cream. And so this one was the original one, and this was knit with Pattern-Nayan. And Pattern-Nayan yarn is lovely. It's a woolly wool, but the put up is not as big, and the yarn has gotten more expensive. So I just decided not to go with that option, for that reason. I wanted to keep the price point of some of the options that I chose down. I did have one tester use bulky weight yarn, and it turned out lovely, so she didn't hold anything double. And I had another tester who hasn't finished yet, but she was going to hold a bunch of just yarns together. So she was going to find kind of scraps or leftover full skeins in her stash and see if she couldn't hold them together to get the right gauge, which you could absolutely do. So I highly recommend looking up on Ravelry all the tartans that I've listed, because I have pictures of all the different colorways and the tartans you could make. And this is the second one, and this is the larger of the two blankets. It's twice as big, and this blanket would be super easy to enlarge, because how would you enlarge, let's say, a garter stitch, right? If the garter stitch scarf said cast on 20 and knit for 100 rows and you wanted it bigger, you would cast on 40 and knit for 200 rows, or cast on 150 and knit for, so you could do the same thing with this blanket. Not difficult at all. And once you start the repeat, you'll totally understand how the colors work in relation to one another. If this one is on the ground, it's just about as, tall as I am. And then this way, it's to here. So this is like a 2-person stadium blanket. You can get 2 people underneath it, 2 people couch blanket, one person who really wants to cuddle in the chair by themselves and have something that wraps all the way around them. And it's the same concept. You're knitting garter stitch stripes all the way across, and then you don't weave on the side with the little purl blips, right? We weave on the other side so that the plaid stays clean. And we weave this one 8, 8, 8, 4, 8, 8 in a different iteration of colors. So not difficult to knit at all. It'd be mindless knitting. It would be, garter stitch stripes, and all you would have to do is count your rows. And so that's not you know, difficult at all, and you could get yourself just a really great blanket. I had testers do just awesome colors, and every tester to a person pretty much said it was so much fun to do the weaving because the plaid started to show. And most of the people got the weaving done in just several hours, right? They just could sit, it could be in their lap, and they could just weave it across. And you don't have to weave in any ends. You just tie them off as fringe. You can make the fringe as short as long as you want. I do have one tester who cut her fringe quite short and is still deciding if she wants to leave it or weave in some of those ends. If you wanted to do that, there's no problem with not having the fringe on, because when you come over on this side, you could turn around and go back the other way. So then you could do all of this gold weaving by going back and forth, and you just have an end at the beginning of the color and at the end. And then you could probably even stitch it under until you got to the next section where you had to do gold again. So if you're not a fan of fringe, I got you covered on that too. I'm just so excited because my testers kept sending me these awesome pictures of their great colors. I had someone do that navy and green plaid, you know, with maybe yellow and cream. I can't remember. Picking your 4 colors will be the most fun thing that you do, I think. I have not tried it with 2 or 3 colors. I just worked out how this was supposed to work in 2010 back in the day for 4 colors, and so that's just what I stuck with. I hope you all want a winter blanket. I hope you all want to knit up just a whole bunch of yarn. I do think you could do it in worsted. I know I'm going to get that question. You could absolutely do it worsted weight. You're just going to have to cast on more stitches, figure out your worsted weight garter stitch gauge, and then knit more rows in length. And I just haven't had anybody take that on. Everybody wanted it to work up faster, so they did it in the DK double. Okay, I'm just gonna let that one sit there a little bit because I'm just so excited about all the different tartans. I can't wait to see what you come up with. You could find your family tartan and make it up. You could, you know, school colors. I just think it's gonna be a super fun winter project. I will say that I'm gonna have a giveaway on Instagram for a bunch of yarn. So we had lots of yarn left over, and I'm going to give it away on Instagram. I'm going to grow my followers a little bit by asking everybody to tag a friend. I haven't done that before, but I decided other people do it, so I'm going to try it this time, and I got a lot of yarn to give away, so I'm going to do it that way. And the name of the blanket is Pump Up the Plaid. So you can go out and find Pump Up the Plaid. It will be available on Ravelry, Etsy, my website, and eventually probably by the week Lovecrafts, because Lovecrafts has to approve every pattern. So once you put it up there, which will be today, then you have to wait for them to approve it. And it just takes a few days, but you can get it. And you can find DK weight yarn at a big discount on Webs and Lovecrafts. I have been out looking. You could certainly use an acrylic blend. It would be highly washable. You do not have to use the brown sheep. I love brown sheep yarns. I love that they're a U.S., you know, family company that's trying to, you know, sell yarn, kind of woolly wools. It's just, it's really just a lovely wool. And I just really like it. This happens to be the half and half, which is the white color, and I would say that it's not glaring white. It's just a really nice, what you would call soft white, which a lot of you may use in your blankets. So anyway, Pump Up the Plaid. I hope you like it as much as I do, because I want to see everyone knit one. I'm just going to leave that one right there, and I'm going to wear this one because I have my orange turtleneck on. Yeah, it's great. It wraps just right around me. It's a perfect little blanket. It's not a bed-sized blanket, although you could make one. You could absolutely make it to fit any size of bed. No problem at all. The blanket is called Pump Up the Plaid. I changed the name out on Ravelry. It'll be on sale tomorrow. And so as you're watching this, you can go over and take a look. Please look at all my testers' pages, because they did lovely color combinations, and then I put some tartan inspiration pictures on the website, so you can look at those as well. Worked out. I couldn't knit this fall, you know, my hands weren't working and I had to hire people to knit, and it was a big ask, and they had to take a chance on doing like the weaving and the knitting, and that's a big project to ask some. I pay my sample knitters, but that's a big project to ask. So Carolyn knit the giant size one, so thank you, Carolyn. And Beth knit the blue one, and then this was the original. And I would say that this one is a little stretched out. It's been washed once, and I hand washed it because I didn't know, I have really long fringe on this one, and I didn't know what my washing machine would do to the fringe. So someone did ask me in the group about washing it, and some of the testers wet their blankets because you need to block your blanket before you do the weaving so that it's stretched out, so those purl stitches open up a little bit. But several of them that said it took a long time to dry. So I put that in the pattern and said you might want to just damp block it or spray block it open, and you know, and not wash it as much. I think if you put it in maybe like one of those big bags, laundry bag, like a lingerie bag, but those are tiny, that it might help it, and you use it on the gentle cycle. I think it might be okay. This pattern Nayan yarn is really rustic though, so it would felt if you looked at it with a pot of boiling water in your hand, I think, like seriously, and you just agitated. But that's why it wears so well. But I also think you could just spot clean it, right? You wouldn't have to. Anyway, enough of me going on about plaid. The pattern will be available on Ravelry, my Etsy shop, my website, as well as Love Crafts. So all three of them this week, and then Love Crafts always takes a little while longer because they have to approve all patterns. So you put them out there, which I just got it back because we're doing the photos, and then they have to approve it. Just takes a few days. But Love Crafts and Little Knits and Webs and any of those discount big box stores will have DK weight yarn for cheaper. You know, look at the yardage amounts and get your best value to make the purchase, because I just think that you could save some money that way. I love brown sheep yarn. I will continue to use it. I love that they're a small independent company in Nebraska, you know, selling yarn, raising sheep, doing all parts of it. And I feel like their price point is fair. I don't think they're making a fortune on their yarn. I have a few special things I have to tell you this week in this section. Many of you are getting your Knit Words soft cover books in the mail, and you're ordering them off my website, and they're being shipped out of Amber and Rick's company in Southern Illinois. And so that whole thing is going really well. So if you were still wanting to purchase the Knit Words book, it is available for $20, and you get a PDF download code with your purchase. You'll get a separate postcard stuck inside the book when they ship it to you, so that you can also download it to your computer for ease in printing out the patterns and things like that. So I have had probably 6 people reach out to me in the nicest way possible and say, I'm so sorry to tell you, but your charts in the Knit Words book are upside down. So when you first get your book and you page through it, you will notice that there are charts in the book, right? And then all of a sudden, the charts are upside down. And people are so nice, and they're so concerned for me that the charts are in the book upside down. But they're meant to be that way for those patterns. And if you were knitting it, you would totally understand. If you had opened it and started to knit it and just printed it on good faith, or, you know, were reading the book. But when you open a book like this and you get halfway through and all the charts are all of a sudden upside down, I totally get it. If you're knitting an item in the Knit Words book that's knit from the top down, you knit the chart upside down. So you have to start in the bottom right corner and knit the word knit from the top of the K so that it comes out the right way. And so thank you so much to all of you who have been just very gentle with your concern with me, but the poncho and the sweater are knit from the top down, and so you need to do those charts upside down. So I did put them in the book so you don't have to flip the book upside down. I just thought it was easier, you know, in a pattern, and if you come to it, you won't make that mistake because you'll be able to start, you know, knitting the bind off right here at this corner and move your way up. So thanks so much. Go get your knit words soft cover book. And then I had someone reach out to let me know that I misused the word shepherd's pie on the last podcast. I was doing the recipes and I just quoted the title of the recipe, but apparently shepherd's pie is when you're using lamb, which makes sense. Shepherd, sheep, lamb. And meat pie, when you're using hamburger, would be called a cottage pie or any other kind of meat. So thank you for letting me know that, because I learned something. And so did several others of you in the comment thread who were reading through the other comments. And so that was kind of fun. It is still, the name of the recipe is still shepherd's pie, and I did make it with ground beef, but it did have an option, I think, in parentheses to knit it with lamb. So, and someone did make it in the thread. I won't call you out, but you said it was delicious and you really enjoyed it. So that makes me feel good. Hey, hun. Gentle reminder to check out the iRockKnitters hashtag on Instagram and use it as you are posting things out there so that we can see the projects that you're making. And join my newsletter list on iRockKnits.com. You can click to subscribe. You will only get an email from me if I have new patterns coming out, and you'll get a discount code or a coupon code, which is going to be happening a lot in the next couple of months. So make sure you get over there and put your email in. And then lastly, a couple of months ago, I was asked if someone could make a donation to the podcast, because you do have expenses when you're podcasting. You know, you have to pay for things, and you know, and I'm happy to do that, but I said sure, and she didn't want to send money via PayPal, so I set up Ko-fi, Ko-fi.com, and you can always throw a couple dollars my way over there. I don't think most people know that I even have one, but it is www.kofi.com/iRockKnits. And I thought, I should probably let people know that that's sitting over there. Anyway, a couple of you found it, and that's just a really nice way to thank me for the podcast. So I'm going to just leave it over there. Enough said. And your Corey stories this week. So this is going to be a rather quick one, but I have to tell you about my reading experience with an audiobook where I got had. So I have a wish list of books that I want to read, and one of the books that I wanted to read was Hillary Clinton's book about the last election, because I kind of wanted to know how she felt about that, and you know, everyone kind of thought she was going to win, and I just thought it would be a fascinating story to kind of hear the behind the scenes. I have since heard that book is just not that great, but what happened was, a book came into my conscience, and it was called Rodham. And I was on Libby and needed a book, and I think I was at Tria, and so I downloaded it. It was available, and I downloaded it quickly, and I started listening to it. Some of you will know where this is going, but I thought I was going to be listening to kind of the story of her life and learn something about politics and presidential campaigns, etc. And I'm listening to this, and it's talking about her, you know, upbringing, where she was born, and her abusive father was just a terrible man, and then she starts talking about meeting Bill and having sexual relations with Bill, and then intimate details about their sex lives. And I was like, wow, I cannot believe that she is telling this story. Like, this is open. And then I thought, well, you know, maybe she's trying to really say, hey, I'm a human too. I don't know. She's trying to put things forward there. And and let us all know that she's actually a real, human being with feelings and sexual thoughts. I don't know. You guys, I don't know why I thought that would be something that she would write about. So I keep listening, and I'm listening, and I'm listening. I'm getting quite a ways into this book. And, I'm usually doing other things, so maybe I wasn't paying super close attention, but eventually you find out that Bill has run for governor, and he's married, and he has children, and then he has having an affair, and he has an affair early on, or yes, well, he's kind of dating Hillary, and I'm thinking, you guys, the book is not true. It is not a true story. So you guys, I listened and did not realize until, maybe even halfway through, that this is not a true story. It's written by Curtis Sittenfeld, and he wrote another biography about another presidential wife, and he tells the story of Hillary as if she had never married Bill and what would have happened. And I didn't know. I had no idea. So let me read you now what I know about this. There was an NPR review that I found, and it said, in her memoir, Living History, Hillary Clinton introduced her husband Bill as a person who would cause my life to spin in directions that I could never have imagined. But Curtis Sittenfeld's new novel imagines what would have happened if she had righted the wheel. It's a nauseatingly moving, morally suggestive, technically brilliant book that made me think more about any other in recent history. That is not what I thought. But her early life is the same. The suburban upbringing, Wellesley College, law school at Yale, then she meets Bill, charming and unfaithful, eventually credible assault allegations against him, but here is where the story changes. So you get all the way in, and then it becomes really graphic and not what I was going. Now I wanted to learn something, right? I wanted to just know and learn something about the last election. And anyway, I hope you all think that that's hilarious. And I want to know how many of you knew that this Curtis Sittenfeld wrote these naughty novels. And then I've talked to many people about this since. But since when can someone take your name and write a sexually explosive novel about you? Like, I didn't even know that could happen, right? Like, someone could write a name, take my last name, Schmidt, and write a novel about me that was really naughty and exploitative, and I wouldn't have any recourse but to just let it be out in the world and be there. I was just really surprised. Anyway, so I'm not going to go on and on. Foolishness. I like a good romance novel, but this was not that. So highly do not recommend. Let's do the hellos, because I'm going to keep doing them. Polly Knits, Irene of the 3-Ply Podcast, Janet Holler. Hi, Janet. Janet's in my knitting group, and she's new to finding me on the podcast, and she's a dear friend. Poodle Lady, Joanne Goldenberg, Victoria Knits. Hi, Victoria. Olivia Mankey, Astrid Hermanis, Brandy Stoker, who comments every week. Thank you, Brandy. Angela Jenkins, who is a friend in real life. Heel to Palm. I love that. Danielle Brown, Janice Butler, Lisa Long, Margarita Deverson, Mary Harker, Melanie Cahoon, Peggy Bork, Pat Howes, Emily South Pursuth, Kathy B., Jersey Soccer Girl, Patty Skaggs, Margaret Ann Provenza, Luann Hendricks, A. Catalano, Eleanor Lowry, Lisa Kingston Coleman, Terry Monk, Sighthounds Galore, which I'm assuming that is a dog person. And I've got something new coming out for you. So, Alicia Melton, Maggie Two Sticks, Jane in South Dakota, Janet Goyer, Gina Thompson, Heather Wilson, Kathy Goodman, Mary Case, Janet Robertson. Hi, Janet. Rachel Weisenstein, Mary Thompson, Cheryl Lacemaker, Michelle, Emma Butcher, Melinda Zaccardi Rousseau, Susie Fab, Linnell Vries, Carol Morrison, Catriona Alsop, Ellen Jimboss, Kara Parkman, Candy Harris, Melissa Pizarro, Eileen Tomero, Glenda Bathgate, who I sent a really weird text, email, or Ravelry message to this week, and she got back to me. It didn't call me crazy, but I'll maybe tell you that story. I have a new pattern coming out, and I found a title for the pattern, and I had a pronunciation issue, and I thought a person in Scotland might be able to help me out. Okay, Robin Gasser, Michelle M., and Joanne Goldenberg, thank you all so much for watching each and every week. Join me on Friday. I hope to see some of you there. I will save that in my Instagram stories. You can also watch it later, but 11 a.m. on Friday, I will go live. Until next time, I hope you all stay well, stay safe. We just got to hang in there a little bit longer. No green bananas. Waddle on. You'll never regret ripping out. Keep your fork and keep it colorful. Bye.